You are a Democrat running down ballot in Texas in 2014.
That's right.
I think the other Sam Houston had a better go of it.
Well, we'll see.
You don't think this is enough? I mean, clearly any Democrat running for statewide office in the last 20 years has had an uphill battle. But this seems to be a particularly difficult year for Democrats given the national political environment. And in Texas, where there was hopes that this might be the year when things turned competitive, people on your side hope that. The fact is, no evidence yet that this is any more competitive an environment than in previous years.
It is, but you know, you mentioned Sam Houston, and I'll probably get the quote wrong, but I think he was the one that said, do what's right and accept the consequences, or something along those lines. And that's how I look at these races.
Yep.
You know, if you don't try, you don't succeed. And I understand it's an uphill battle, but you know what? I feel a lot of enthusiasm out there.
Yep.
There's a groundswell that's really hadn't been tried in Texas, and people talk about battleground and all the effort.
Yeah.
I think that's there, and in my race, which I want to focus on,
well, of course,
I have an opponent who's not here. I have an opponent who won't show.
But does it matter? You know, the fact is, it is a strategy time-tested that if your party is ahead, generally, and you have an R next to your name, let's say for the last 20 years, you can take a knee and run out the clock. It doesn't make a difference if Mr. Paxton doesn't do interviews with me or with editorial boards. It doesn't make a difference if Mr. Paxton doesn't appear in public between primary day or runoff day and election day in an environment like this. Would you agree?
No, I think so. I think that I think we're on the verge of it making a difference. I think in this case, in this situation, and you mentioned, I ran in 2008, got close to 46%.
It was, for Democrats over the last 20 years, a pretty significant percentage of the vote.
Exactly.
Right.
And in this race, the message is getting out. It's hard to raise money. I'll spot you that when you're not already an elected official. But we're getting the message out every way we can about Mr. Paxton's ethics problems, about the criminal issues. And it's an issue that was raised by his opponents in the Republican Party.
How'd that work out for Dan Branch?
Well, it's that was a very low turnout, you know, far-right vote. So I don't think you can compare that to the general election where we'll have Democrats, moderates, and it'll have a much larger turnout. So the way I look at it, I'm starting out where Dan Branch spent a large amount of money informing moderate Republicans of Ken Paxton's problems, about what, $4 or $5 million.
So you believe actually Dan Branch's spending in the primary ultimately benefits you in a general, because that bit of news has already gotten out to some in his party. It sounds to me you just took the opportunity to define your campaign in the negative against Mr. Paxton as opposed to in the positive for yourself. Is your whole campaign basically Sam Houston, I'm not that guy?
No. I think it's important to know about Mr. Paxton, but you know, again, that's why I come on these programs, and that's what I come on. I mean, my campaign is really about trust, about someone who's practiced for 26 years and bringing a private practice into the Attorney General's office and taking the politics out. That's what I want to do. Taking
the politics out of the Attorney General's office.
Absolutely. That's one of the big parts of my campaign.
Why did you decide to run? Obviously, you made a decision, as I said, in 2008 to run for state Supreme Court. You know, practicing attorney, probably doing okay for yourself, have a happy life, a couple of kids in Houston. You know, you could just continue along that same path. No need to do this. No one forcing you to do it. Why decide to run?
It would be much easier to stay there. My children are teenagers. I laugh and say I'm running for statewide office, running a full-time practice, and raising 2 teenagers right now. So I could choose an easier path, but I'm running because I truly think it's the right thing. I think that politics, in particular in our state, with the Republican-dominated slate and in the Attorney General's office, has simply ended up being too extreme, too radical, too much rhetoric. I think that for our state to do better for all the citizens, and I'm sure we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about the AG's office, that if both parties are represented, if you have all the voices heard, then our state does better. Our party has been down for a number of years. But again, when you go back to say, why do you run, and people ask me that, again, to me it's imperative that we run qualified people every time, work as hard as we can, get out and get the message. And I'm an optimist, and I believe that when the message is out about not only me, but about my opponent, and that's important, but that we have better ideas, we have real ideas to talk about education, to talk about the future for all Texans. And that when we have those ideas prevail over rhetoric, and we'll win. That's why I'm running.
I want to talk about those ideas. I want to ask one more question on the politics of this before we get into it. In some respects, running as a down-ballot candidate in a challenging environment is doubly hard.
I'll
right?
agree.
Because you have both the negative of the party ID if the party is out of favor, and you also have no name ID, really, if you're far down the ballot. Very few people pay attention. I'm reminded of Kirk Watson's race for Attorney General in 2002 against Greg Abbott. He ran a very good race by everybody's estimation, but he basically did the same as everybody else, because if you're running for AG, people are really paying attention further up the ballot. How dependent are you on Wendy Davis's performance on Election Day to possibly snatch victory from the jaws of defeat? If she does better than expected, does that help you? But if she does worse than expected, does that sink you?
If she does better than expected, obviously that helps me.
Yeah.
If she does worse than expected, I would be disappointed. I don't know that it necessarily sinks me. But
you're not counting on straight ticket votes ultimately to pull you over the line.
But the better the straight ticket, the better the turnout, the better that we get. When people vote, Democrats win. When more people vote. Yeah. Wendy Davis, Leticia Van de Putte, the entire slate of Democrats drives that. The better everybody on the Democratic ticket does, the better that I'll do.
It ultimately pulls you up.
Right, but every race is also different, and again, I was talking about some of the differences in my race, which is why I kind of brought up my point.